Hello, everybody. It is Friday again. Can you believe it? This is our 10th Lunch and Learn Incubator session. We have been learning and munching together. And today we have a very special guest. Our special guest is called Marcus Kuhn. And Marcus Kuhn is a lean startup believer. He is the project development head at What? So today he'll be telling you all about how to develop a minimum viable product. So Marcus, welcome. Thank you for being with us today, and please take it from here.
Hey.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, yeah. For me, it's a bit weird. I hear the sound of the video like 30 seconds after it's being spoken. Maybe someone can help me with that, and then I can get started.
Okay, maybe we can mute everybody who's on the call so that I'm checking. Okay, there are a lot of people to mute.
Let me just get started, so.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm gonna get started. So, hey everyone. I want to talk about minimum viable products, and that's all about how to get you from idea to product market fit. So that's a process, and I want to take you from what it takes with the idea, how to get ready to get the minimum viable product up, and what you need to do afterwards. Maybe briefly about myself. I am
1, 2, 3.
Okay. So maybe about myself. I am on slide 6 at the moment. So I personally am a strong believer in the lean startup. I started being interested in this methodology and this concept in 2010 or so, when I did my first startup. Back then there was a blog by a guy called Eric Ries, and he wrote about startup lessons learned. And I was super fascinated by this scientific approach on how to do startups, and how they used data and findings in how they approached developing an idea. And this fascination continues on. And in the meantime, Eric wrote a book that was the Lean Startup Method. And I kept on building digital products. Right now, I build digital products for startups and for innovative enterprises as a partner at What Digital. We're an agency, and I'm the head of product development there. Now, I just want to take you from this thing of an idea that you have and that you've been working on, and some of you will already have done much more, and get you to product market fit. What I also wanted to say is that for all of you, it should be an interactive presentation. So if you have questions, please just raise a hand, speak up, let me know. If you look for an example, ask. I'm happy to expand. And we can also do a Q&A round at the end of the presentation, of course, where you can bring up your specific questions or struggles that you've been facing, or just things that you've been wondering. Now, this in essence is the process that is about how you get from the idea, the initial idea, to product market fit. So it goes through 3 stages. The first stage is that you need to validate an idea in the market by doing technical research and so on. Then there is the idea of building the MVP. So that's having the first version of the MVP built. And later on, you need to iterate because the first version of the product rarely survives contact with real customers. And you need to adjust it and fine tune it based on your learnings until you get to product market fit. And product market fit is this magical moment when your product starts scaling by itself, when you hit the moment where you're ready for growth. Now, if you have an idea, you will have to validate. And validation is all about finding out, is my idea possible? And is there actually a pain? One of the largest problems in companies and startups is when they don't solve a pain, but just a small problem. Because if you don't do that, it's really hard to sell your product. So you will want to find out, how passionate are people about this problem? Are they ready to pay for a product like this? And that means you have to go out and you have to talk to people. You have to run tests. And tests can take many, many different shapes. There's great books with a lot of experiments, but one experiment that I like to do and that works a lot is that you need to create a landing page that actually advertises your product as if it were there, and you get people to get their interest registered. That can be something from starting with getting them to enter their email address to start a sign up, to even having a checkout process. And what you do is then, if you don't have a product yet, that you can tell people that the product actually is not available yet, but them entering their email address indicates that they were interested, that they wanted to go for it. Or you tell them, for example, it's not available in their region, or you handle the request manually if it's something you can do manually, because then you learn a lot more as well about validating the processes so that you're getting ready towards building an MVP. Because you can't really do an automation of a process if you don't fully understand the process. Is that clear? Or does anyone have questions about this part? Cool. Then I'm just going to plow ahead and we're going to get to the gist. Now you've validated your idea. You know that people are interested in it. You have validated feedback that tells you that people want to buy this. This is the time when you move towards building an MVP. And the MVP is the first version of your product with which you go to market. And already in the term, there is this antagonistic thing. So it needs to be minimum, but it also needs to be viable. And this is really important because we have two things here that are important. One is we want the product to be small. We want it to be tiny as possible so that you can build it fast. Because the essence and crux behind the lean startup method is that you want to get to market fast so that you can learn and so that you spend your money and resources that you have in the right spot. Now, it needs to be fast, right? But it also needs to be viable. People need to be able to love it. So that means although you need to build something fast and quick and small, it still needs to contain the number of features that people can love your product. So it's really important that people actually find what you built attractive. That means compromising, for example, on user experience is the absolutely wrong approach when you build your MVP. Compromising on automation, on the other hand, in the background, is absolutely the right approach to take. Because what you want is to have a facade to the outside that makes you shine, that gives your users a really polished experience that they can love. And you're fast because actually the processes in the background you don't build fully, also because they will change. As I said, a product changes a lot after the first version. So automating everything from the start normally is a waste of money. Now, already in the validation phase that comes before the first build, you validate hypotheses. And also with the MVP, you need to focus a lot on what kind of hypotheses you want to validate. So with the first product, you want to see the core issue and you build it around that. Now I see the question that B2B ideas, how to validate them. You actually create a landing page. You test your sales process. You call people or you create ads for B2B. It's the same process. Obviously, you need to adapt it from idea to idea and from audience to audience. But I work with quite a few B2B startups and companies, and they all sell online. And what you, for example, can find out there in the validation phase is who your actual customers will be, like who finds the product, what kind of role in companies actually is interested in it. And then you can also find out if those people actually are the decision makers. Because always, when you sell something to businesses, you want to be able to talk and convince to decision makers. But normally, they are not the ones that will search for your product. So a landing page that helps you capture some data and then talk to people will help you a lot in figuring out these things. Does that answer the question, Miguel? Perfect. Yeah, he wrote in the chat that it does.
Another quick question, if you don't mind, Marcus. Can you briefly explain what is the difference between a landing page and a website? Because I want people to understand really well what is the difference.
So the difference might be a theoretical one, but how I would see it is that when you talk of a website, you normally mean something that fully represents your business. So you have a start page, you have an introduction of a few products, you introduce your team, you might have other things. So it's a fully fledged website. A landing page normally is a single page that just tells a story. So basically that would tell the person, hey, you have this problem. This is something you could solve it with. This is why we are great. Now buy. So a landing page is something where people land directly, where they're being told a story and they are converted.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, then once you have your MVP built, this scope found, and maybe you guys have questions after a bit more about scoping and how we go into this, but it might make sense to talk about this in practical examples, how to focus on the core and also how to identify the core of your idea. After building it, you need to iterate. So the MVP kickstarts your learning process. And you now are in contact with real customers. You're now in contact with people that use the product, and you see how they use it, and you can ask them why they use it, and so on. And it's all about iterating towards product market fit. Next slide, please. And knowing when you have product market fit is really hard. So what you do is kind of you go back to the hypotheses that you had written for your MVP, and you see if they were actually fulfilled. Are people buying? Do you solve their problem? Are they happy? And based on what you find, you start improving the product. You're adjusting processes, might change the target to whom you sell. And you judge if you have product market fit on a few dimensions. And it's not a science and it's not exact, but there is indicators that help you find out. I have 4 factors that help you identify whether product market fit is closing in, and it's things that you can track. One is organic growth. When your product starts growing by itself, when people find you and start using your solution, normally you found something that works and something that indicates that people want it. So organic growth is just the growth that you didn't do anything for. So people find your website not through an ad, but because they landed there somehow. Friend recommended it. They searched it on Google and found it. Organic growth as the first indicator that you're moving towards product market fit. A second one is users sending invites. So viral loops, so functionalities in your product that help others, your users, find new users, are a great indicator, because people will only invite their friends if they actually are convinced that your product is good. Like, you don't want to be embarrassed. Like the times of Facebook games where you just send invites to all your friends, they are over. Now, especially when we think again about the B2B side, you don't recommend the product to someone if you are not convinced. Regarding the question, PM stands for product market fit. And product market fit is the moment when your product fits the need of the market so well that you're ready for growth and that your product starts growing by itself. A third factor about how to measure if you're heading towards product market fit is actually just tracking the Net Promoter Score. It's this classic question that you see a lot, which is, how likely are you to recommend this to a friend? And then it asks you on a scale of 1 to 10. Interestingly, here is the most revealing people are the 1s and the 10s. Everything in between is not so interesting, but a person that's so passionate about how you offended them and is willing to give you a 1 on this, and actually went through the effort to give you a 1, that person normally you offended. That person has like bad emotions towards you. So asking those what went wrong and how you can improve normally is the best way of learning fast. At the same time, the really good ones, really good ratings, those people you can turn into ambassadors. You can turn them into I think in COVID times we call that super spreaders. You can turn them into something that makes things that help you really find a lot of new customers. Those fans are a key. Lastly, as a fourth factor, if you are heading towards product market fit, is towards retention. Retention means that your customer stays your customer. It means that people don't quit, that they keep on using your product. If they keep on using it, they probably are happy. And that also is an indication that you're heading towards product market fit. Okay. This is the basic process of how you move from idea towards product market fit. Of course, all these steps are quite involved. And I would want to ask you if you have any questions, or if we should go into specific things, parts of the presentation, and look at them in a bit more detail. Would love to make this fairly interactive.
So on behalf of Marcus, I would like to invite you, yes, unmute yourself and take it away.
So that's hello, hello, Martin. Nice to meet you, Marcus. But I'm from project Old School. We are creating a platform for senior learners, a platform for learning platform for 65 plus. And there is currently a situation where we are creating a MVP. And at the same time, we have our first paying customer asking for, thank you, asking for certain specific features. We want to combine that development process so that this actual customer project also serves as an MVP. So we are now, and I'm the technical lead in this team, and we're discussing on how can we ensure that at the one time we have the MVP, but at the same time it needs to be stable enough to serve as an actual platform for way more than 1,000 users and beneficiaries. So is there anything on that side where you can have an advice?
So my advice would be to be very confident in your vision. So those people came to you because you know how this is done. And normally when you do client guided development, especially for one client, there will be a lot of special requests. And it's your responsibility to decide what parts of those special requests actually fit into your idea and which ones you need to delay. So normally people create a roadmap, and then if a request comes in, you can put it on the roadmap for later, but you should really focus on the features that help you in creating something that also others can use. Mm-hmm. When it comes to building this first version that then will go live, I mean, this is really great because you have someone that will help you test things, that will help you implement things and so on. But obviously it puts also a bit of pressure on you. So
that's exactly the situation, yeah.
The task of how much do you automate might change when you know that you will have 1,000 users from the get-go, right? But every step that you take to automate will push your release date back. Now the question is how you want to go about that. Are you confident enough to have a roadmap where you design first your front end and the back end processes you handle manually? Maybe you have a few volunteers or people that work abroad that might be a bit more affordable, that can help you in processing things manually. I don't know your idea in detail, so I don't know what kind of matching processes need to happen or so. But yeah, question here is how much do you want to automate and to find that balance?
So we came up with one idea was to have an kind of sophisticated and good development on the surface, building a progressive web application and having that going smoothly on many devices, but would use a common content management system or database like a CMS for doing the back end work. So to adapt somehow to existing content management systems, they serve already some kind of user management profile log things we could need, but have the flexibility and freedom to create exactly what we want for our users on the surface. Would that be a combination you would also see as a possibility?
I don't know. So in my take for what an MVP should be, it should be on a solid technical base. So especially if you think about something that should serve 1,000 users, and then that might scale beyond by adding more customers, using a stitched together, not being mean here, but a stitched together WordPress solution normally will hit some limits, right? So it probably makes sense to build something that scales or use a solution that is tailored to this, if you find one. But yeah, it's hard to judge from the distance without knowing the details. But if you want, we can sit down together for half an hour. You drop by our office, and happy to look over it together.
Sure, thank you very much. Yeah,
of course.
Hi, David here. Sorry, I'm in public transport, so if it's too noisy. I asked a question in the chat. I don't know if you can hear me, but because of the unique nature of my solution, I've been told that I need to do first a prototype, then a proof of concept, and then the MVP because it's so unique. The problem is there's no option to do it manually because we're basing it on data points that people are already having. Any suggestions, points, tips, tricks, what to avoid in each of these stages?
Right, so these are terms that that are used fairly interchangeably by different people. So it's a bit hard to say what that person meant with the difference between a prototype and a POC and an MVP. For me,
I can elaborate if I can just jump in. That the prototype is not using live customer data, but the proof of concept is already using live data. So yeah, that's the one distinction.
If it's about finding out if what you are doing is valuable to people, I actually would not build anything. I would talk to people. I would do
user research,
data, crunching of the data in Excel or whatever tool you do, and provide them a manually prepared PDF report that you send, ideally actually present to them. And then see if what you did actually adds value. And with that, you can fine-tune your report, data that you analyze, see if you actually can get the results. And if people are happy, then you can build a product. You're muted now. Maybe you want to unmute quickly?
Sorry about that. Yeah, can't see my mouth moving, but you can see the mask moving. Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, you gave me some inspiration because what we're trying to do is help people understand the impact their digital habits have on their mental health, and we're targeting B2B. So yeah, I think it's about I think you've given me enough inspiration. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Cool. You're welcome.
Don't you love it how real it is and how we are wearing masks and we are traveling on transport and still designing the solutions? That's just amazingly real. Thank you very much, everybody. Who wants to go next? Who wants to ask a question next?
I'm happy to jump on if that's okay.
Please.
Thanks, Marcus. That's helpful. I'll give you a few seconds of my or our proposition. Our TabLive, which is the project I represent, is a digital streaming platform to enable artists and theaters to connect to their audience digitally. We've gone live a few months ago. Actually, we kicked off as part of another hackathon, the European, the EC versus Virus hackathon, and since then I've been experimenting with real artists. So we've had 14 live events this far with word of mouth sort of organic growth, and that's enabled us to test our proof of concept. So I'm still maybe confused as to whether I'm in the POC or MVP space. As a digital platform, once we have a degree of an Italian nexus, we are organically attracting attention from other artists. So whether we sort of need to build this out in a particular market or going into other regions, such as Switzerland, which is where I'm based, for instance. It's a nice sort of experiment around right now, but it's starting to raise questions around where we want to set ourselves up. As a digital platform, I'd naturally say, well, we like to think we can go global, but we think this can be accessible anywhere. But we are having creative, constructive sort of internal questions around how do we need to play this? Should we just concentrate on a single market and a single? I should probably articulate also we're cross art live performance types, so it can be a musician, a comedian, a dancer. It's not sort of mono performance type. So that there's a degree of complexity, if you like, or variety around what we can offer. But in order to scale it and define our MVP, question one is: do we just go focus on Italy on music, for instance, and prove that really can start building, and we build from there? Or keep experimenting across the various geographies we may attract organically, as well as art types, so to speak. hope that
Okay.
makes sense.
What goal have you set for yourselves? Like, where do you want to be in 3 years?
We want to become the digital streaming platform of choice to complement physical performances, and we think we can amplify and complement physical performances post-COVID. We dropped the COVID sort of feature, if you like. We've received lots of positive reaffirmation from artists, theatres that are digitalizing themselves to make fun, to, if you like, confront the current challenges, but then become a solution to stay. So nothing will stop future festivals, music concerts, gigs, to have a physical as well as a digital audience. And therefore, frankly, we do not want to set a limit. We aspire to become as big as the market is out there, which is, if you like.
And do I understand correctly that right now, basically, you're stitching things together, like you're using a Zoom link with a Google form, and then people can join, and then you stream somewhere?
We're streaming within our own web platform, but I made a clear note of some of the words you said earlier around having a solid technical base. We do not have a solid technical base yet. We are still stitching, cobbling some out-of-the-box solutions.
Right, stitching makes a lot of sense when validating, but later on it will slow you down a lot. So you need to find the right moment to make that cut, and also especially if you have like a global ambition and it's about streaming. We all know how it is to stream globally. That means a lot of infrastructure. That means a lot of things. So that also means completely different financials than doing it in, let's say, the Zurich market, where you can do it on your server that you connect to your gigabit internet at home. So I think the part here needs to be a discussion about vision and align the team on a common goal. And then you can set the product vision as well. Because what I hear is that your team doesn't know yet. And so I think that comes before the product.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually, that puts it out nicely. We're starting a business coaching journey today. And part of what that will resolve is exactly getting us all on the same page. I think, yeah.
Really cool.
In hackathon type mode, I keep referring to the ostrich mode zone. You typically sort of stuck into the project and don't look widely enough. So we need to spend more time looking at that.
There's a book called Scaling Up that I really like, that has a section on vision and how you can align yourself.
Who's that by?
Vern Harnish, I think.
Thank you.
And I really like that and think it has a good guide on how to align along strategy together.
Excellent holiday reading. Thank you.
We cannot hear you, Miguel. Okay. Miguel is going to type the question. Now the excitement is just increasing. Let me see. Yeah, so it is indeed, the question is that I said product market fit, if you find it, it's a magical moment, but it's not science. And if I can say more about the process of finding it, then maybe some real life examples. The real life examples, I can talk more about experiments, but the process of finding it really is about staying in close touch with your users, finding out what they like about your product and what they dislike. And in different stages of your company, that will be very different ways, because while you will always have like some web analytics or something installed in your product, when you have 40 users, that will not be very meaningful. So in the beginning, even if you have a product, a quantitative approach to finding out how people use a product and what they like will not work, right? So in the beginning, you're not testing whether the blue or the red button works better, but you're actually finding out if people like this value proposition, what they're missing, and so on. And you do that by talking to them. So in the beginning, really find every opportunity that you have to talk to your customers. You see someone has problems with entering some data, or someone entered data and then didn't follow up. Call them, email them, talk to them, ask why, offer your help. One of the things, if you build an MVP that has no automation, is also that gives you actually a lot of opportunities to talk to people, because when you process things and your process is not that well defined yet, you will have questions about how they want to do something, or if they can provide you another form or so. It's always an opportunity to talk to people, and that's great. At Y Combinator, they say do things that don't scale, and that's what they mean with that, right? Build things that you cannot imagine yet doing for the first 1,000 users, but maybe for the first 40. Then you try that and you automate it when you know how the process works. So back to the product market fit part of your question. You will see these metrics that I mentioned, and you find another metric that works really well for you. For example, how many users have recommended us, or what's the average users that someone else gets to sign up, or how often do they come back? Like if you see activity of users increasing, that can be a sign as well. So what you will do is you track along those 4 lines, and you continuously track, and the important part is trend. And so if you do that and combine that with the qualitative approach to find out what you need to improve, that will help you iterating over time your product to something that will head towards product market fit. And it's not like this sharply defined line, but when you have it, everything becomes easier. For example, you do online ads, and suddenly every ad leads to more conversions. And every conversion actually leads to 3 recommendations. So then your growth becomes much easier. And that's why you're aiming for it. Real life examples. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Marcus. Can you please say one word on what is qualitative approach so that people can understand better?
Yeah, so quantitative would be that you look at your statistics and try to find meaning in them. And qualitative would be to do user interviews, to do user testing, just to talk to people. And the idea here is that often when you look at your analytics, even in the beginning stages, you will see, oh, a lot of people drop off here. Like they stop the process at the 3rd form step, but you don't know why. And that's the moment you need to pick up the phone and actually ask them, why did you stop? What were you missing? And then you can improve along those dimensions. Okay, then examples. I'm struggling right now with a good example that I can share. Yeah, I will think about it for a moment here. But right, so the big difference as well is that there is a difference between iterating and pivoting. So you start to pivot if you see that your idea doesn't work at all, and you iterate and try to improve marginal things if you feel a certain traction. Okay, are there other questions? In the meantime, I will think about examples.
Who else would like to unmute themselves and take the advantage of having Marcus with us today?
yeah, maybe what I can say as well is that if you have specific questions that you don't want to talk about in a public stream, feel free to reach out to me. I will put my details in the chat. I'm always happy to talk about ideas, how I would approach them, and how I would go about this. I know that a lot of these topics have a lot of nuance, and you always need to look at them based on what all the circumstances are. For example, yeah, right. If we think back again to the arts example, how do artists find them? Do artists recommend each other, or is it actually venues that do it? And so on. All these questions will help in finding out how you need to tailor your product and how to build it. So this is what the validation phases are about, and it's knowing a bit about what questions to ask.
I have another question in the meantime.
Yeah,
so we have this, the testing, what you talked about is very, very crucial for us. But now we are having two different users, actually. We have the client, that's a B2B connection, of course, and we have the beneficiaries, as you would call that, perhaps, the actual users. And there's two levels of expectation. Then it's clear that the paying client needs satisfied users, but at the same time has his own thoughts about the use and value of the product that is not identical to the users which we would test out with an MVP if it was the B2C thing. So how to go with that?
So often you call this B2B2C.
Yeah.
There often is very, sometimes even contradictory interests between the business that is your payer and the consumer. And one way to treat this is actually to deliver them dedicated interfaces. So the person maybe that pays you gets an interface to see how many activity was there. Have I reached my KPIs of engaging people? Like thinking about what you mentioned, maybe it's government organizations that will be giving you contracts. So they normally have like a reporting requirement. So you can make it very easy for them to tell their bosses, yes, I've managed to get 1,000 people into courses. I'm great. And then you make them shine, and then they like to buy from you. And for the consumers, it might just be very different, right? In the end, goals often will be similar, but the data that they need is different. So you can satisfy that by giving them tailored inputs. And even going back to the MVP, these reports that maybe the company that pays you needs, you can still do manually in the beginning. Like you can provide them a PDF once a month that gives them these insights. You just take the data out of the database, crunch it in Excel, and give them something that looks nice. And then often they will be happy.
Okay, thank you very much. Cool.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else? Otherwise, I guess we slowly wrap.
Yeah, we can also do that while people are still maybe thinking about some questions. I want quickly to say that those of you who have shared with us their video and their description have already been featured on our Versus Virus website. So congratulations, and thanks a million to Laura Olgiati, who did this for you. So yes, you have been featured on the Versus Virus website. I also want to share that next time we have Catherine Hauser, who is going to talk about scaling for impact, which will be very, very aligned with what Marcus recommended. So please do join again. This is your last chance to ask a question. If you don't have any more questions, I would just like to recap very quickly by saying that the first thing that you need to do is to build a landing page, right, Marcus?
If it fits your idea, yes.
If it fits your idea.
If
Beautiful.
you have an idea that has customers that you will find online, then build a landing page to validate
Yes.
that there is actually interest, and also to find out how much it costs you to get a user.
Yes, and the landing page has your problem, your awesome solution, how awesome you are, and why should people contact you, and maybe a form for their telephone number or address, so that you can get in contact with them and you know that they're really interested. Correct, Marcus?
Yes.
Okay. So now that we've sorted this out, I think Miguel had another question. It's in the chat.
Still can't hear you, no, sorry. Yeah, I mean, talking to customers is hard, right? So Miguel says that Paul Graham in his essay, Do Things That Don't Scale, mentions that people dislike talking to customers. And that's true, especially like Y Combinator at the start, but still was aimed very much at like techie, nerdy students that would come out of an engineering degree into a company. And there, the stereotype might fit better than in other places, that they don't like to talk to people that much, and that they like to make code work more than talk to customers. And it really is the case that you need to put yourself out there. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But Miguel says that he has a discrepancy, that he does the same and prefers to stay home building stuff and not talking to customers. But that talking to people excites him, and telling them what he does, and that he's disappointed when they don't use it. I think to bridge that gap, and I actually don't see that much of a gap, you just need to force yourself. Go out there. Maybe you do it once a week. Maybe you do it once a day, and you just reach out to customers, to people that you demo it to. Really, you need to learn that this feedback is crucial for what you build, and also the thing that often helps engineers understand is that you actually, by talking to customers, build the right thing and not the thing that you think is right. And that means you waste less resources, because you actually build something that then will be used, and not something that just you like. And that's where I would, bridge the gap.
And just to clarify, in management terms, this is the difference between being a leader and being a manager. A manager does the things that are right, and the leader does the right things. So I think that's all from us. If there are no more questions, thank you very much for joining us. Do join next Friday, when Catherine Hauser will be talking about scaling for impact. And Marcus, thank you so much. It has been amazing. And do get in contact with him. You have his email address in the Slack channel. Thanks a lot, and have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.